Good evening, and welcome back to another night of shared stories and quiet adventures. Tonight, we are wandering through the Zodiac, that old circle of signs so many of us check for comfort or curiosity. A simple map of seasons and symbols that has guided stargazers for ages. I would love for you to come along. If you enjoy these stories, please leave a comment and tell me where in the world you are listening from. It always makes my night to read them. It is the easiest way to support the channel, and I truly appreciate it. Now, make yourself comfortable, slow your breath, and let us begin. Night settles like ink in a great bowl, and the old observatory stirs. A circle of bronze ticks softly, and the ceiling resolves into the ecliptic, the path the wandering lights follow, the same road that once guided sailors and kings. 12 gates gleam along that road. They are called signs, and they are older than the marble underfoot. The circle is not a superstition so much as a story about time, carved into the sky by watchers who refused to forget what returned every year. The first light to speak is the Sunday. It travels that path in a steady pilgrimage that takes the length of a year. Where it stands defines the seasons. When the sun reaches the eastward gate in spring, the circle is said to begin again, for that gate opens the year and lets the seeds wake. The stars behind the sun do not show by day, yet their rooms are named as if they were seen, because memory can map what eyes cannot. The ancients marked that turning with festivals and oaths. A new fire was kindled, old debts were counted and forgiven or pursued. The first gate became a sign of beginning, and the circle learned what a start felt like. The moon follows the same road but keeps a quicker rhythm. It completes the circle in less than a month, visiting each gate for a brief night and changing face with every visit. In old temples, the month was kept by the moon, not by ink on paper. Market days rose with its crescent, harvest rites waited for its fullness. The moon taught that time can be counted in breaths as well as in years, and that the small cycles underwrite the great ones. The 7 classical wanderers pace the road with their own tempers. Mercury likes to dart ahead and then turn back to gather what was missed. Venus walks at dawn and at evening like a faithful herald, sometimes rising before the sun and sometimes following after it. Mars strides as a captain who remembers a grudge. Jupiter moves like a generous judge whose heavy steps are blessings. Saturn keeps the far gate and walks with the dignity of winter. These 7 are patrons who lend their manners to the signs they visit. When a patron stands in a room, the room speaks with that voice, and so the sky has accents as well as names. The circle is 12 because 12 fits the year by the return of the Sunday. There are 12 rooms in the ring, and each holds a rule about life. Some rules have to do with starting, keeping, or changing, so the ancients called these 3 modalities the movers of the year. The cardinal rooms open doors and start things. The fixed rooms anchor and hold them steady. The mutable rooms allow endings and transitions. This is not decoration. It is the skeleton under the skin of time, felt in the city as much as in the fields. A city knows the need for all three. Without the door there is no beginning. Without the anchor there is no harvest. Without the turning stair there is no next chapter. Elements haunt the rooms as climates. Fire warms and quickens. Earth cools and keeps. Air lifts and speaks. Water softens and remembers. These are more than metaphors. They are ways of acting in the world. The fire rooms like a drumbeat for starting. The earth rooms like a ledger for finishing. The air rooms like a forum where ideas trade hands. The water rooms like a chapel where memory heals and tears teach. In every old culture that carried the zodiac, the fourfold breath of the world could be found in ritual and lore. Below the 12 sign rooms stretch 12 other halls called houses, not of stars but of living. The first hall concerns beginnings and the name that fits like skin. The second hall holds value and bread and the secret scent of cedar chests. The third hall shelters letters and siblings and short roads. The fourth hall keeps ancestors and the fireplace. The fifth hall sings of children and theatre and joy. The sixth hall looks after service, sickness, and craft. The seventh hall attends to contracts and the face across the table. The eighth hall speaks in whispers of shared wealth and the gates of endings that lead to beginnings. The ninth hall keeps pilgrimage, law, and learning under long roofs. The 10th hall stands high as the public square and the calling heard from a tower. The 11th hall fills with friends and councils. The 12th hall is soft lit and secret, where retreats and dreams run like underground streams. When the wheel turns, the sun visits these halls through the filter of the sign rooms, and the year tells different stories in the same city. The signs are named for constellations that stand near their gates, but a sign is not the same thing as the picture it was named for. Sailors and priests learned that the signs are wedges of the circle cut into equal twelfths, while the constellations have shapes that refuse to fit neatly. The picture spills beyond the border of the room, and the picture drifts slowly over eras. This drift is called the precession of the equinoxes. It is the motion by which the pole star changes over ages, and the place where spring begins walks backward against the background of distant stars. Some traditions tie their reckoning to the drifting pictures, and some fix their reckoning to the seasonal gates. The difference makes two schools that tell time with different anchors. Both watch the same sky. Both keep faithful notes. In Mesopotamia, the watchers kept the earliest known star lists on clay. They counted risings and settings by water clocks and marked the path of the moon. They knew the lion and the scales, the archer and the goatfish. The sky was a legal tablet, and the gods were judges who wrote with light. Egypt gave the world the decans, star groups that rose each 10 nights or so, used to measure the night in stair steps and to keep the Nile calendar honest. Greece dressed the signs in stories and curled them into poems. Persia and India kept schools and observatories that refined the art. The circle does not belong to one city. It is a shared library written across borders and centuries. Every sign has a patron who rules it by affinity. A sign is at home when its patron stands in its room. This state is called dignity, and it is a way of saying that some voices sound truest in certain halls. The ram listens to Mars and learns courage. The bull listens to Venus and learns value. The twins listen to Mercury and learn speech. The crab listens to the moon and learns protection. The lion listens to the sun and learns honor. The maiden listens to Mercury and learns craft. The scales listen to Venus and learn accord. The scorpion listens to Mars and learns depth. The archer listens to Jupiter and learns breadth. The goat listens to Saturn and learns structure. The water bearer listens to Saturn and learns reform. The fishes listen to Jupiter and learn mercy. In some rooms, the patrons are exalted as honored guests even when not at home. The sun is exalted in the sign where spring is strongest. The moon is lifted in the room that crowns the wheat. Each exaltation is a festival, and each festival teaches a rule about when a power does its fairest work. The sky works by aspects, which are glances between rooms set by known angles. Trines are glad bridges between rooms that share the same element. Sextiles are easier partnerships set at a friendly distance. Squares are hard roads that force a turn and produce grit. Oppositions are pulls across the circle that demand balance. Conjunctions are meetings in the same room, which can be feast or fight depending on the guests. In old manuals, these glances were drawn as chords across a circle. Priests and mathematicians agreed for once that numbers could be tender as well as exact. The fixed stars carry legends that braid into the signs like threads in a carpet. Regulus sits in the heart of the lion and remembers crowns. Aldebaran marks the eye of the bull and watches roads of empire. Antares burns in the scorpion with the colour of old iron. Fomalhaut glows near the water fishes and keeps a lamp for poets. Sailors swore on Sirius when the dog days baked the sea. Each star gives tone, and while the wanderers bring events that move, the fixed ones bestow themes that endure. Retrograde is a lesson written as a trick of perspective. When a planet seems to move backward, the watchers did not believe the sky had broken. They believed the world was granting a revision. A review is offered. Lost pages return. Old letters ask to be answered with a better hand. People who keep good records use these seasons to repair what haste spoiled. People who ignore them often repeat errors and then marvel at their own misfortune. Time gives second chances, but it does not put a ribbon on them. Eclipses are serious voices. When the sun loses its crown or the moon loses her mirror, the city grows quiet. In the old world, eclipses were read as royal interludes. Something hidden takes the throne for an hour. The chorus speaks instead of the king. As with all rites, what follows depends on conduct. A scandal can be exposed and mended, a policy can be retired and replaced, a household can change its burden bearer. The sky does not cause the act, it provides a stage on which truth arrives on time. The circle learned techniques for precision. Terms and bounds were set as smaller rulers within each sign. Faces or decans provided a triptych inside a single room so that the first days of a sign felt different from the middle and the end. The lot of fortune was calculated from light and shadow to find where the body thrives. Rising signs were noted because the sign that climbs over the eastern horizon at the moment of birth colors the whole chart as a host colors a feast. None of this cancels free will. It speaks rather of weather and roads. A traveler still chooses the destination. The map simply tells where storms gather and where bridges hold. Calendars were tuned to the sky so that cities could keep faith with fields. New Year was set by spring for some cultures and by autumn for others. Market fairs rose with bright stars. Pilgrimage routes opened when the lion ruled and closed when the goat took the mountain. Night watch shifted by the moon so that guards did not fall asleep at the same hour each week. The circle was civic before it was private, a way to run a city that trusted the clock the world already had. The four angles of the sky deserve ceremony. The east is the place of rising and is called the ascendant. The west is the place of setting where contracts are sealed. The midheaven crowns the chart and tells where a voice will be heard in the forum. The lower midheaven is the kitchen hearth and the ancestral well. These anchors are used to hang a life like a garment on pegs, and astrologers for centuries have taught apprentices to find these pegs before speaking of anything else. Old myths wrap the circle with stories that explain why each sign looks the way it does. The ram is the rescuer whose fleece shone like dawn and who remembers first courage. The bull is the holy animal of builders and bankers whose patience outlasts kings. The twins are ship heralds and letter carriers who can repeat a secret in two voices and make both seem true. The crab is the gatekeeper who walks sideways to confuse attackers and never forgets a slight against family. The lion is a royal beast whose roar announces summer and whose heart is the coin of honor. The maiden carries a sheaf and a lamp and makes fields clean again after flood or war. The scales were once the only object among animals and heroes, proof that law is itself a living thing. The scorpion knows the medicine that looks like poison and knows that endings can be doors. The archer splits distance with a thought and lives on both sides of the border at once. The goat climbs through ice and shows that time is a staircase with steps that can be counted. The water-bearer pours out a fresh sky on old laws and keeps a campfire for heretics and inventors. The fishes swim in a sea that joins two worlds and hum a song that returns exiles to shore. These are not only stories, they are teaching mirrors. When a city forgets them, it forgets the angles by which it keeps its soul straight. Rituals arose from these mirrors. In houses ruled by the bull, perfumers and potters kept festivals where scent and clay were blessed. In months ruled by the twins, Messengers ran relays and oaths were sworn on ink. When the crab had the year, families repaired old griefs and sealed new kitchens with salt. Under the lion, stages were built and titles were granted, and a child who shone was told that shining comes with service. When the maiden's lantern burned, physicians taught apprentices and wells were cleared. Under the scales, treaties were refined and masks were changed with care. Under the scorpion, debts were counted and inheritances were sorted so that wealth would not rot. Under the archer, roads were repaired and scholars were welcomed at city gates. Under the goat, ledgers were audited and the winter bell was rung to honor endurance. Under the water-bearer, councils considered reforms and inventors showed their jars of new weather. Under the fishes, the poor were fed, the penitent were given clean blankets, and the city remembered that mercy is policy, not only emotion. There are seasons within a life that echo the seasons of the year. Childhood warms and begins like spring at the first gate. Youth climbs into summer and takes the stage. Early adulthood contracts and bargains across the table and learns the price of promise. Middle life descends into deep halls where power and loss teach sharper lessons. Later life climbs the winter mountain and measures time with a kinder eye. Old age carries jars of memory to younger fields and then lies down beside the river that flows toward whatever comes next. The wheel does not forbid detours. It simply shows the rhythm by which most travelers breathe. When scholars speak of fate, they mean something more modest than iron law. They mean the pattern of weather on a particular sea and the way a vessel is built. A chart is a shipyard record. It tells what sails were cut and how the keel was set. Skill still matters. The captain still chooses which islands to visit. A storm can be ridden. A harbour can be left behind. The oldest manuals are filled with advice on conduct because conduct is the only lever mortals hold. A brave use of a difficult season dignifies it. A careless use of a favourable season wastes it. The circle invites responsibility rather than resignation. Cities keep their own charts. Founding moments are noted, and the behaviour of institutions seems to follow the sky that crowned their birth. A theatre that opened under a blazing sun will rise again after ruin and make laughter holy. A guild that began when Mercury was awake will produce translators and inventors who solve problems others cannot even describe. A hospital founded under the maiden's lamp will discover small cures that change millions of lives. The circle is civic as much as it is personal, because people build together under the same weather. There are star watchers who read without romance, and there are poets who read without numbers. The circle prefers both. It asks for mathematics that can be checked and for language that can be loved. Tables must be correct. Myths must be remembered. When both are kept, prudence and wonder travel together and give good counsel. The sky cannot be bribed, but it can be understood. It does not command love or hate. It shows cycles and asks whether a person will live cleanly inside them. The old observatory sleeps again. The bronze circle ticks and settles. The 12 gates breathe like sleeping animals. The patrons walk off stage. The sun keeps its steady road. The moon refills her cup. The fixed stars hold without hurry. In another city, a child is born and an eastern gate opens. In another house, a lover returns and the scales weigh the apology. In another courtroom, an eclipse speaks truth and the king steps aside for an hour and the people notice what was always there. The wheel turns because the world turns. The story holds because the world remembers its lines. The red gallery wakes as if a kiln has been opened. Braziers breathe, banners tilt in the unseen wind, and a seam of light runs along the floor in the arc that marks the quarter of fire. 3 thrones glow from within. One is edged like a horn and smells of iron and thawed earth. One carries a mane of gold thread that flickers like a pride of small suns. One is carved as a bow drawn to the cheek, with a quiver of star points resting at its foot. The year steps into this hall every time it needs a beginning, a heart, or a horizon. The first to rise is the ram. When spring breaks the cold lock, the eastern gate is his doorway, and the city feels that the world has taken a first breath. Old Watch has placed his sign at the equinox, because the clock of light and dark lists toward the side of day at that moment, and fields remember the signal. In the night roof above the hall, the constellation stands with a marked brow. The bright star at that brow is Hamal, an amber furnace that shepherds can track without a map. Near it are Sheraton and Mesathim, 2 stones set in the ram's horn like nails that fasten the season. In the oldest lists from the rivers between 2 lands, the ram began as the hired man or field hand, a figure who started work. The name turned into a sacred animal, and the sacred animal turned into a gate. Every sign keeps a patron, and the ram calls Mars to stand beside his throne. The patron strides in with a red cloak and a sword, and the room sharpens. In old texts, this is called rulership. It means that a planet's manner fits a sign's task. Mars grants courage and the nerve to act before the road is perfect. In the ram's room, that hurry becomes a virtue when the world must be moved out of sleep. The same hurry can become a fault in quieter months. In the ram's calendar, the days are cardinal, which means they open the quarter like a door. Builders choose foundation stones under this wind. Generals prefer to launch a campaign while the first flowers tear the frost. Farmers know that some seeds do not wait politely for a committee. Fire signs share a kinship that old teachers called triplicity. They answer one another across the circle with the ease of kin at a feast. During the day, the sun speaks for their clan. By night, Jupiter speaks for them. Saturn is the wise neighbor who joins when needed. The ram hears these voices clearly. That is why spring mornings carry a singing brightness that feels like the world has been cleaned. The same mornings under heavy cloud still carry that brightness in the bones of people who keep the year with their hands. Here the sun is not only a lamp but an officer who promotes a soldier. The first steps count more than the perfect speech that comes later. The ram carries a tale that every school child of the old world learned when letters were still rare. A golden sheep bore 2 children on its back to escape a false accusation and a murderous plan. One child fell into the sea and gave a narrow strait her name. The other reached a far shore and hung the bright fleece on a sacred tree with a sleepless dragon coiled at its root. That is why the ram begins not with leisure but with rescue. It guards a memory of something that must be done at once because life depends on it. In temples, the ram's month saw first fruits brought in baskets, old tools sharpened and blessed, and oaths of soldiers renewed with wine poured on the ground. In the map of the circle, each sign owns a section of the body of the great man of the year. The ram rules the head and face. Old physicians wrote in their ledgers that cuts taken under this weather bleed quick and heal quick when care is good. Armourers showed helmets in the market with scenes of the ram in relief to ask for clear sight and sound judgment at the first clash. Every citizen understood that first impressions are set when the ram keeps the door. Above the gate of the ram sits a hidden honor called exaltation. The sun stands taller in this room than in most others. The ancients used the word to mean that a dignified guest becomes a festival in that place. When the sun is strong in the house of the ram, titles are granted, teams are named, and an air of appointment rests on decisions. A king anoints a successor, a school names its new year. A pilgrim chooses the road with a firm voice rather than with a sigh. Exaltation does not make the season without fault. It makes the season noble in aim and clear in tone. Aspects are the lines that bind one room to another. The ram looks by trine to the lion and to the archer, and those glances are considered friendly. The room also squares the rooms of the goat and the crab. Squares are laborious roads between houses that pull against one another. Old readers watched for those roads when advising a city on taxes or a family on inheritances. They taught that labor is not misfortune. It is the turn of a wheel that forces mastery. The ram learns patience from the crab and strategy from the goat by way of these hard roads. The lion rises when the year has ripened, and the long roofs burn with noon. The constellation lies along the ecliptic like a royal beast at rest. Near its heart burns Regulus, the little king, a star of steady blue fire that has seen many crowns change heads. Denebula marks the tail, and Algeba marks a pair of stars in the main that even a small glass can separate. To sailors and farmers, the lion's season announced high summer, fairs in the market, and contests in the field. In lands along the Nile, the heat joined with the rising of the dog star to open the flood. Stone guardians carved as lions watched causeways because the animal had become a seasonal emblem of strength and of protection. The lion's patron is the sun itself, and when the patron walks into this hall, the light seems to come from the stone rather than from the braziers. This room is fixed. Fixed means held fast, the keeper of a quarter at its full strength. The task of the lion is to stabilize power and to pour warmth evenly. In courts, the lion presides over honors that have been earned. In theaters, the lion presides over the role that fits a person like a proper name. In kitchens the lion presides over the feast that thanks a city for its labor. Duty belongs to this sign as truly as glory. Old storytellers kept that pair together to keep young nobles from mistaking applause for license. The myth that wraps the lion is a lesson in measure. A hero faced a beast whose hide could not be cut. The victory came not through a sword but through a grip and a vow. The hide became a cloak that remembered danger and gave its wearer a new respect for strength that is quiet and sure. In the calendar, that story turned into ceremonies of investiture. A child who had shown character in school or service in an apprentice hall was given a mantle or ring and told that honor is not a crown one wears to bed. It is a posture that one keeps when no one is watching. In the sky of signs, the lion rules the heart and the spine. Physicians advised joy in moderate cups under this weather and warned against pride that swelled like summer storms. Musicians tuned harps for open-air stages. Priests polished mirrors and urged leaders to love the reflection only as reminder of the face that must keep cheer for others. The fixed nature of the sign supported that message. The quarter does not need new plans. It needs steady hands above the granaries and a brave voice when the crowd asks to be fed a second feast before the barns are stocked. The lion answers by trying to the ram and to the archer, so beginnings and quests feel welcome here, but the hard roads run to the scorpion and to the water-bearer. These are the roads by which personal glory is tested by secrecy and by the needs of the city at large. In time, every royal person or public voice must choose between the comfort of admiration and the truth of service. That is why old manuals place the lion near laws of oath and adoption. A throne is a family adoption by a city. It is a vow taken in front of the sun. The archer rules when the year bends toward the longest night and the mind begins to measure. In the star roof, the archer draws a bow within a teapot of bright points that even a child can pick out with a finger. The archer stands near the river of stars, and farther still in the same quarter lies the crowded heart of the galaxy, a region so rich that a small glass shows dust lanes and clouds like the breath of old gods. Sailors of the old world told new apprentices to learn the archer's kettle as a friend. In the south, near the archer's knee, shines Nunki, a star the river kingdoms named long before the coastal empires were born. Caus Australis glows along the bow. To many peoples, the figure was not only a centaur but a divine archer called Pabilsag, a composite guardian whose tail and wings warned enemies that knowledge and force can ride the same horse. The archer wears more than one myth. In the Greek world, the best teacher of heroes was a centaur who knew both medicine and music and was kinder than his kin. In other traditions, the archer is a hymn to the first author of law and to the scribe who took down the law with reverence. In all of them, the figure keeps the same gesture. The arrow aims at something far and true. The wrist is steady, the eye is clear. The horse beneath understands pace and terrain. When cities honor this room, they invest in roads and in libraries. When they neglect it, rumor becomes law and travel becomes threat, and the borders are feared more than the ignorance inside them. In the body of the year, the archer rules the thighs and the long muscles used for distance. Physicians advised walking under this sky, not as sport but as philosophy. Pilgrims in many lands started journeys when this sign was high, and left chapels with a light pack and a vow to return better than they set out. The mutable nature of the sign made farewells easier and homecomings sweeter, because both were stages on a circle rather than a breaking of it. Fire has one more law to teach through these three rooms. It shows how an element can wear three faces without losing itself. In the ram, fire is ignition, the match struck in a cold room. In the lion, fire is the hearth, an even blaze with a circle of chairs. In the archer, fire is the torch carried ahead into the dark, so that others may follow without fear. The Star Watchers wrote this in terms of modality, but the city understood it in terms of daily bread. A baker needs a spark to wake the oven, a steady blaze to bake the loaves, and a carried coal to light the next day's oven. The same bread that feeds a house feeds an army and feeds a school. Rulerships are not the only dignities that matter for these rooms. Terms and faces carve the 30 degrees of a sign into smaller provinces. In the ram, the first face belongs to Mars and favors decisive strikes. The second face belongs to the sun and favors public acts that rally others. The third face belongs to Venus and softens victory with grace. In the lion, Saturn holds the first face and grants gravitas at the height of heat. Jupiter holds the second and grants magnanimity, and Mars holds the third and grants the courage to defend a throne without cruelty. In the archer, Mercury holds the first face and favors clever maps. The moon holds the second and favors changes of weather and fortune that teach compassion, and Saturn holds the third and reminds the traveler to bring discipline to freedom. These were not dry tables for cloistered scholars. They were working notes for magistrates and captains and guildmasters who needed to time acts with tact. The fixed stars add their color to the fire rooms. Regulus crowns the lion and brings themes of honor and ascent that can turn to downfall when arrogance forgets that all crowns are borrowed. Denebula at the tail speaks of endings and departures from court when change is due. Hamal counsels a clean pick of the moment to act and warns that early storms test the brave. Nunki stands for a seal on true names and is cherished by pilots who need sure bearings. Caus Australis teaches tension held without tremor. These were used as omens not because the stars cause deeds, but because steady lights make honest mirrors for the mind. Festivals grew around these constellations as naturally as vines find a trellis. The first month of spring welcomed the ram with rites of kindling. Torches were carried from a common flame so that hearths across a district shared one light. Summer fairs under the lion crowned poets and wrestlers and kept courts of appeal in the open air so that judgment could be heard by all. The archer presided over markets of maps, books, and exotic wares, with caravans from salt deserts and ships from delta cities sharing news on the steps of temples. In those weeks, rhetoric and navigation were taught to apprentices together, because both are arts of getting from one point to another with a sound course and a steady hand. Aspects among the fire signs were used to plan joint ventures. A city that founded a school of navigation under the Archer might dedicate a ship under the Ram and open a theatre under the Lion to teach its citizens joy in common. When Mars stood retrograde over a season, the city remembered to review militia orders and to mend the hinges on its gates rather than to seek new fights. When Jupiter crossed the Archer's room, charters were granted to guilds of printers and jurists who would widen the frame of justice for a generation. When the Sun crowned the Lion, titles were renewed with ceremony that reminded leaders that the crown belongs to the office rather than to the person. The red hall cools and the doors open upon terraces. Clay jars line the steps. Vines hang in measured arcs. A kiln breathes a pale glow. This is the quarter of earth where craft becomes law and patience becomes wealth. 3 rooms anchor the quarter. One keeps a vineyard and a ledger. One keeps a lantern and a clean table. One keeps a bell and a mountain path. These rooms do not rush. They make time heavy and useful. The bull stands first among these terraces. The constellation rises like a broad shoulder. The eye burns red as Aldebaran, a watchful light that once marked a leading star for caravans. Across the shoulder spreads a V of stars called the Hyades, a cluster of sparkling rain. Near the back hovers the Pleiades, a tight group that every shepherd knows by sight, young stars that sing in old poems. The bull walked out of the myths of river kingdoms as a sacred animal of work and value. In the stories of islands to the west, the bull carried a princess across the sea to a new shore and a new house. In another tradition, a celestial bull was loosed upon a city to punish pride. The sign remembers both gifts and prices. This room is fixed. It holds late spring steady like a hand on a potter's wheel. Venus rules here as a patron who knows scent and coin and the way color can calm a mind after war. When the patron enters the hall, music slows into rhythm and voices lower to talk of contracts and harvests. The moon is honored here as exalted. Old almanacs mark this as a season when planting is blessed and when the body learns to repair. Old physicians linked this sign to the neck and throat. Choirs sang under this sky. Merchants called buyers to market with a bell that carried clean across fields. Tools lie along the walls like poetry that can be touched. Strong handles worn smooth, scales that will not lie. In months of the bull, perfumers and potters hold their fairs. Oaths are sworn on grain and on salt. A vineyard is not sold for a quick price. It is kept and tended across generations. That is why a city keeps its mint and its record house under this emblem. Value is slow. Beauty may be sudden, but it is made in workshops that sweep at dawn and bank their fires carefully at night. The maiden keeps the second terrace. The constellation is a long parchment in the sky with a bright jewel near her left hand called Speaker. That star is an ear of wheat drawn in light. In river kingdoms to the south and east, the maiden meant order in fields and calendars that obeyed the Nile and the rain. In stories of the north, she was the last of the just to leave the earth when iron manners spoiled the age of gold. Some saw her as the goddess of grain, others saw her as a figure of justice who would return when people learned clean conduct again. Both memories join here. This room is mutable. Summer turns to harvest under this lamp. Mercury rules as patron and arrives with a bundle of papers and ink that does not stain. The patron speaks of margins and lists and the holiness of detail. The exaltation of Mercury is noted in old tables for this sign, and that honor appears in the neatness of clinics and workshops. Apprentices learn stitches and measures. Physicians look closely at stomach and intestines. Herbalists gather seeds with care. This is not a glamorous room. It is sacred because it is exact. Under the Maiden, cities examine their water, wells are cleared, ledgers are balanced line by line. The sixth hall of service and small sickness opens brightly to these steps. Guilds of scribes and nurses hold rituals in which tools are washed and named. Priests teach that humility is accuracy in one's own work. Pride wastes grain. Precision saves lives. Speaker watches a royal blue star and reminds rulers that a single ear can feed a family when the measures are honest. The goat watches from the highest terrace where stone cuts against cloud. The constellation climbs as a creature whose front half remembers the sea and whose hind half remembers the heights. This joined body is an old sign of a god who kept sweet water in jars under the deep and taught cities to write and to measure. In later poems, the sea-goat stands for the way time rises from chaos and sets bones in the body of the year. The goats of the mountains wear little bells. A large bell hangs in the hall as if it could call a city to work. This room is cardinal. Winter begins with a door opened by this keeper. Saturn rules here as patron and carries a ledger of seasons. The patron speaks of structure, of laws that do not care if a man is loved, of patient ambition. Mars is honored with exaltation here. Old captains preferred to campaign under this sky because the cold keeps the mind clear and the ground hard for marches. The knees are the body part associated with this sign. Old doctors trace the way injury and endurance shape character as they shape posture. Across from these terraces, a bridge carries the year into an arcade of air. Wind moves letters along colonnades. Banners flutter and sound like pages turning. The quarter belongs to the element that speaks and thinks and builds law from conversation. 3 rooms hold the quarter. One keeps a scribe desk where 2 hands share one ink. One keeps a court where measured voices ring like tuned bowls. One keeps a balcony for inventors who pour new weather over old roofs. The air is lucid and the noise is not harsh. It is the hum of a market that believes in ideas. The twins walk first. The constellation shows 2 bright stars nearly equal that even a child can pluck from the winter sky. Castor and Pollux are their names in a Western tongue. They are linked in a myth of brothers who share fate, one mortal and one divine, who ride to rescue sailors when storms turn men small. In other stories, they are a pair of heralds who carry messages across dangerous passes. The sign remembers both. It treasures quick feet and quicker wits. It loves practice and the way a question can call a wiser answer into the world. This room is mutable. Late spring becomes early summer here, and travel within a city is busier than travel between cities. Mercury rules again as patron but wears a merrier face. The patron brings riddles, couriers, and a bag of toys that teach grammar without scolding. Old healers linked this sign to shoulders, arms, and lungs. The third hall of letters and short roads opens like a lane full of shouting children. Under these steps, printers set type and couriers learn routes. This is a sign that values the news more than the sermon. The twins keep the first rules of debate without making them tyrants. Talk in pairs, then listen. Translate before you judge. Keep jokes clean when the matter is heavy. Keep questions brave when the matter is sacred. Mercury's night role as triplicity voice for air gives thought to dreams and commentary to whispers. The city keeps newspapers alive under this emblem because rumor is a fire that must be fed with facts until it goes out without burning the granary. The scales stand in the middle hall of air. The constellation shows a pair of pans that in older times shared a figure with the scorpion. Later, the scales became a distinct picture in the sky. The names of the two bright stars begin with words that mean southern claw and northern claw, a reminder of old unions. Yet the symbol that endured was the measure itself. In houses of the Nile, the balance stood for the weighing of the heart against a feather, a legend that made justice feel like a breath. In the hills of Greece, the scales belonged to the returning maiden who became a judge. Both memories teach the same reverence for the level measure. This room is cardinal. Autumn begins at this door with the equinox, when day and night hold each other evenly. Venus rules and enters as a diplomat with a blade hidden under flowers. The patron speaks of partnership and treaty, of taste that can soothe wolves, of grace that can also say no. Saturn is exalted here. That is why old schools of law teach that elegance without difficulty makes a poor judge. This sign trains ears to hear what is not being said. It trains eyes to see where a balance cheats with a hidden rock inside the pan. The scales preside over the seventh hall of contract. Weddings take place in this court, with vows spoken in full sentences. Lawsuits are tried with music in the language, not to charm a jury but to keep passions at the discipline of reason. Old physicians linked this sign to kidneys and the lower back, and wrote of the way justice in a life keeps the blood clear. The city hangs many mirrors in this hall. People learn to check their posture and their arguments both. The water bearer keeps the far gallery where light becomes crisp as winter stars and thought jumps from stone to stone without slipping. The constellation pours a river of faint stars from a jar. Near it shine two lights with blessed names, Sad al-Melik and Sad al-Suud, king of good fortune and luckiest of the lucky. In older riverside religions, a god of water and wisdom poured channels that kept cities alive. In later courts, the sign turned into the myth of a youth carried into the sky to serve wine to a god. Flood stories and reform stories both gather here. The jar is a civilizing tool. This room is fixed. Deep winter holds so that the year can learn to change without panic. Saturn rules here as patron again, but the old man wears work boots and a rebellious grin. He speaks for engineers who build bridges no one asked for yet will soon need. He speaks for councils of friends who build movements that will not fit easily into a throne room. The 11th Hall of Fellowship and Councils opens upon these steps. Clubs appear that are more than entertainment. Societies form that make laws think about the future. Old doctors link this sign to calves and ankles. Runners smile under this sky. Mapmakers climb towers to draw new districts. Meanwhile, the fixed star Fomalhaut sits nearby in the mouth of the southern fish and lends the quarter a tone of vision often given to poets. The water-bearer is not sentimental. The sign keeps a clear air that can feel cold to those who crave flattery. Yet it is the quarter that keeps cities clean of stale custom. It pours fresh water on old debates. It brings electricity to towns that still argue about candles. Air signs share a triplicity, with Saturn speaking for them by day and Mercury by night, with Jupiter as the one who participates and expands good ideas without pampering. This means that heavy thought has a place in bright hours and playful thought has a place after dark. The market of breath does not fear argument, it fears lazy speech. Under these roofs, the library sits at the corner of the court. Messengers are paid as well as guards. Inventions move from balcony to street and are tested without ceremony. Between the earth terraces and the air arcade run the hard roads called squares. Taurus meets the water-bearer here and learns to price ideas when they still look like toys. Taurus meets the twins and learns that a word can raise or ruin a year's worth of work. Virgo meets the twins and learns to summarize. Virgo meets the scales and learns that perfect is not the only kind of good. Capricorn meets the scales and learns that grace can make a law endure. Capricorn meets the water-bearer and learns that a tower can be built to face forward rather than to defend only the past. These roads are not punishments. They are the muscles that make a city move. Within each quarter, the friendly roads called trines bind allies. Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn pass recipes and methods and budgets across their shared table. Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius trade letters, jokes, and drafts of new charters. The sextiles that link earth and water and link air and fire shape real days as well. Under them, pottery glazes are perfected, plays are published, and treaties are signed with clauses that keep neighbors from becoming enemies. Night deepens. The kiln goes dark. The court falls quiet. The balconies hold only the soft tapping of a late inventor. The terraces keep a cool scent of soil. The year has learned to keep what it started and to speak what it believes. Soon the doors will open to the west, where water keeps memory and wraps the halls in tide and dream. The circle will listen there as it listened here. Mist gathers in the western nave and the braziers turn to silver bowls. Water speaks here in three voices. One guards the door and keeps the kettle warm. One descends into the vaults where secrets are priced in honesty. One sings in the canals of sleep and returns the lost to shore. The constellations that mark these rooms are old. Their myths wrap hearth, underworld, and dream in a single tide. Cancer keeps the gate where summer begins. The stars are small and quiet, yet the room contains a swarm of bees. The beehive cluster hangs like a faint cloud that resolves into 1,000 lanterns through a glass. The ancients called it a manger. Nearby glints a Cuban's, a claw that holds fast. In heroic tale, a crab once scuttled from the reed bed to distract a killer of monsters. The gesture failed, yet was honored with a place in the roof of night. The sign remembers that love defends even when victory is unlikely. The moon rules here and enters like a mother of tides with many faces. A city measures this month by kitchens and doorways. Guardianship is policy. Ancestors are consulted. The fourth hall opens, and home becomes a serious word that means walls, well, and the names of the dead. Old physicians placed the chest and stomach under this sign and taught that a city lives long when it feeds its young and respects its old. In the classic tables, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, which means mercy ripens easily when this room is bright. Foundlings find families. Old quarrels soften at the table. Farther along the river stands Scorpio with a heart like a coal. Antares burns red where the body bends. Shaula and Lezeth mark the stinger, 2 points that hunters learn early. The figure belongs to desert epics as well as to island songs. In one tale it rose to strike a boastful hunter who swore he could best every creature. In river kingdoms, the scorpion stands beside gatekeepers who guard the mountain that touches sunrise. Within this hall the air deepens. Mars rules and arrives with a lamp that does not go out in the wet. The eighth hall listens and speaks of joined wealth, of vows that reach below daylight, of the rite of ending that begins a new harvest. The body part taught for this sign is the secret seat of generation and the blood that belongs to it. In the older canon, Mars alone governed this room. In later schools, a second patron in the deep was named, one who moves slowly and loves buried treasure and long vows. Either way, the lesson holds. Power without secrecy is noisy and brief. Power with discipline becomes medicine. Schools taught antidotes and oaths in these weeks. Archives were sealed. Inheritances were counted so that grief would not rot into feud. The water path ends where 2 fishes swim as a figure 8. The western sky shows a dim circlet and a ribbon that ties them. At the knot flickers Alresha, the little cord that keeps companions from losing one another in river current. A gentle myth from the islands says that a goddess and a child leapt into the stream to escape a monster and found safety as fish. Babylonian lists remember a great swallow that drank the flood and returned it as life. The sign keeps both memories. Pisces belongs to pilgrims and to those who find a world too loud and need a cloister that will let them breathe. Jupiter rules in the older books and enters with a staff and a song. Venus is exalted here and brings a cup of kindness that tastes like rain. The 12th hall opens with its rooms of retreats, charities, and visions. Musicians thrive under this sky. Old physicians placed the feet here and wrote of the way walking in quiet heals thoughts that words cannot. In many cities, an amnesty was offered in these weeks so that the penitent could begin again without humiliation. Water signs share a trine that feels like a chain of wells. Cancer remembers and protects. Scorpio tests and transforms. Pisces releases and redeems. The moon sets the rhythm and the sea confirms it twice each day. The rites are civic as well as private. Under Cancer, hearths are blessed and the census is updated so that no widow is forgotten. Under Scorpio, the treasury balances accounts and the courts oversee adoptions and bonds. Under Pisces, the almshouse and the hospital receive new linen and new letters of support. Fixed stars lend color. In the Scorpion, Antares carries the old warning that pride meets its rival in the dark. Near the fishes glows Fomalhaut across the river. A royal light of poets that teaches vision is a public trust and not only a private comfort. When night is very still, the three waters can be heard as one river moving through the city. A pot bubbles in a quiet court. A lamp glows under stone where names are spoken with clean intent. A canal reflects a small boat, and the boat carries a singer who hums a tune that turns strangers into neighbors. Water keeps the story while other elements keep the tools. The central nave brightens, as if dawn has been invited indoors. The 7 wanderers step from their chambers and cross the stone like actors moving from one stage to another. Each carries a manner that changes every hall it enters. The old books call them planets, yet the word means nothing without their voices. They are patrons who lend styles to the signs and speak in cycles that return like trusted friends. The sun arrives first, crowned with a calm fire. Wherever it stands, a room grows honest. In the lion, it teaches noble presence and asks that honor be practiced in public and in private alike. In the ram, it gives command at the start of things and calls for bright courage that does not shout. Its exaltation in the ram has been sung since clay tablets were young. Its joy is in the 9th hall where long learning and true faith are kept. The sun marks 1 year as it walks the wheel, and that year becomes the senior measure for fields and courts. The moon follows in a silver chorus. It moves through the 12 rooms in less than 1 month and gives each a different dream and a different appetite. In the crab, it rules and makes home into policy and memory into law. In the maiden, it steadies the hand that heals. Its exaltation in the bull turns planting into prayer. Its joy is in the 3rd hall where letters and short roads belong to daily bread. The moon keeps calendars for sailors and the nights of fasting and feasting for temples. Its light is a book that changes pages each evening and yet tells the same story of return. Mercury enters with keys and margins. In the twins, it rules language so that markets can bargain and schools can ask better questions. In the maiden, it rules craft so that medicine and bookkeeping stay clean. Mercury is exalted in the maiden and is strong in rooms where tools are exact. Its joy is in the first hall, which frames the face of a life and learns how to speak from the start. When it turns apparent backward, the world offers reviews. Missed messages knock again, contracts amended, roads are retraced to find dropped names. The trickster is not a breaker of clocks. It is a tutor who insists that the lesson be learned before promotion. Venus passes with a scent of cedar and a treaty tied in ribbon. In the bull it rules value, pleasure, and the work of keeping. In the scales it rules accord, courtesy, and the long art of peace. Venus is exalted in the fishes, where compassion becomes policy and art becomes a medicine that citizens can afford. Its joy is in the fifth hall, where children, plays, and glad risks teach the city to laugh without cruelty. When Venus shines as morning herald, love rises early and looks forward. When it shines as evening herald, love lingers and looks back with gratitude. Mars crosses the floor with measured step. In the ram it rules beginnings that require nerve. In the scorpion it rules depths that require vows. Mars is exalted in the goat, where discipline wins campaigns and a city keeps its walls without boasting. Its joy is in the sixth hall, where hard work and the tending of wounds earn quiet thanks. When Mars is bright, the city finishes tasks it had feared and speaks plain about danger. When Mars turns backward, craft is sharpened and training improves, since haste cannot be trusted and pride wastes lives. Jupiter comes large and laughing and gives more to every room it enters. In the Archer it rules journeys of mind and body and the law that defends the traveller. In the Fishes it rules refuge and music and the mercy that cleans the slate without weakening the spine. Jupiter is exalted in the Crab, where abundance is kept for families and for strangers with equal respect. Its joy is in the 11th hall of friendships and councils, where commonwealth is more than a word. 12 years make one of its rounds. Cities build libraries when it returns to its own rooms. Households open new rooms for children or for study when its blessing crosses a threshold. Saturn arrives last with a bell and a ledger. In the Goat it rules time, hierarchy, and the craft of finishing in winter. In the Water Bearer it rules reform that carries heavy jars of clean water into stubborn quarters. Saturn is exalted in the Scales, where law becomes lasting because it is fair. Its joy is in the 12th hall, where retreat and contemplation teach humility. 29.5 years carry one full ring. When the bell returns to where it rang at birth, a life takes stock. That return is famous because it touches career and marriage and the knowledge of limits. It is not a curse. It is a harvest. Wheat and chaff are separated so that the next field can be planted wisely. Shadows attend these patrons. Eclipses silence the sun or the moon for an hour and put the chorus on the throne. In old practice, this meant that hidden truths came forward. Kings listened to common voices. Courts revealed sealed papers. A city used the moment to correct what had grown crooked. Nodes mark the gates where these shadows meet. The northern gate lifts aims. The southern gate releases debts. The pair moves through signs in cycles that flavor a season with themes of arrival and farewell. Sects divide the theatre into day and night companies. The Sun, Jupiter, and Saturn prefer the day and give bright growth and clear laws when the noon actor is on stage. The Moon, Venus, and Mars prefer the night and give protection, pleasure, and private courage when the chorus leads. Mercury can serve either caste and carries messages between them. Old readers weighed charts by sect before anything else, since a tool used at the right hour does clean work. Aspects stitch the hall with invisible cords. Trines ease exchange among kin of the same element. Sextiles invite useful meetings across friendly differences. Squares demand effort and produce mastery. Oppositions require balance and teach partnership with an equal. Conjunctions press two voices into one chair and ask the sitter to grow. The pattern is not a verdict, it is a choreography. Citizens who study it learn when to press and when to pause. Beneath the pageant stands the lattice of dignities. Rulership gives a planet home. Exaltation crowns a guest with special joy. Triplicity grants allies by element. Terms and faces break the rooms into small provinces where lesser lords set tone. A judge might advise that the first days of a month encourage beginners, the middle favors steady hands, and the last asks for elegant endings. These tables survive because they work like tide charts. They do not cause the ocean. They let fishermen come home safe. The sky remembers returns beyond the ring of Saturn. The moon returns monthly and resets habits. The sun returns yearly and sets crowns for birthdays and for founding feasts. Venus returns with a star-shaped pattern that takes 8 years to complete and leaves beauty in civic memory. Mars returns near every 2 years and brings trials that forge stamina. Jupiter returns in 12 and opens a larger room. Saturn returns in 29 and closes a chapter with dignity. A wise city writes its charters with these pulses in mind. The nave quiets. The patrons take their places on the perimeter again. The clock of the world does not tick without us, yet it keeps perfect time. Those who learn its music borrow calm from it. They do not abdicate will. They choose their hour and their measure as a sailor chooses the tide and the wind. The ceiling dims to the true night. The halls keep their scent of oil, paper, and stone. Outside, the constellations hold their posts.